a claim, we can't just say maybes. Maybe they had spaceships, maybe they didn't.
It's likely that there was.
No, it's not about likelihood. Likelihood they had spaceships, because how would the Prophet go in space?
As a historian, you have to acknowledge the proximity of certain cultures and ideas.
You have to establish the evidence rather than saying
There
yes.
is evidence. There is a lot of
So where is the evidence that the Arabic linguistic repertoire had the concepts that they can be king or owner of time? That's all I'm asking. What you need to produce is a linguistic evidence from Arabian Peninsula, from any of the cultures,
Okay, let me give you
Arab or non-Arabs.
Sanskrit, the Sanskrit language. You know, English is based on the Sanskrit language.
I don't.
Sanskrit comes from India. Yeah? You know that. Sanskrit.
From India?
Yeah, Sanskrit.
Okay,
Sanskrit.
carry on.
So English is based on the alphabet is from Sanskrit. The English language is one of its roots is Sanskrit. A lot of European.
And what is Sanskrit based on? Which language?
It's an ancient Indian language.
No, Sanskrit is based on what?
I don't know.
Because the language I speak is based on Sanskrit. And I don't think the Sanskrit English is based on Sanskrit. Maybe some words here and there, but to say the whole of, do you have evidence from the linguistic scholars?
The alphabet is definitely, there's definitely a lot of evidence.
Do you have, so the scholarly community agrees the English alphabet is based on the Sanskrit alphabet?
There's a lot of evidence here that I
Okay, interesting. I mean, I can look into it. But what's the relevance?
So the relevance is, you're saying the ideas, it's impossible that the ideas wouldn't have spread from India to the Middle East.
We need evidence. Where is the evidence?
Well, it's in the Quran. You're saying that there's, someone says in the Quran that he can become the Lord of time. I'm saying that's the evidence.
Your evidence is, you know what? It's likelihood.
Tell me this is
I've just given you.
It came from a human being because they didn't have this idea.
No, I'm saying the structure of the Quran. The structure of the Quran is not something the Arab within their customs of the language can imitate something like that, because they won't speak like it. They don't speak like it. For example, if I say
it could have been from someone who wasn't from the area. It doesn't necessarily mean it's from God.
So even the Quran says, the Prophet has learned from someone else. Who? Where is the evidence?
Wait, the Quran says,
the Quran is in pure Arabic. That's what the Quran says. And what they're alluding to, someone like a Roman, someone who's a Persian, I'm now saying someone who is Indian. You have to have evidence for it. This is how, historical criticism work. Where is the evidence that yes, the Prophet ﷺ learned from anyone? Where is the evidence? You have to show the convergence of the information, the transmission of the information, the possibility of the information. Where they knew he was growing with them for 40 years. They knew that he didn't speak a lie. He was called as-Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the reliable, truthful one. He grew up among them. And then when he came at the age of 40, God made him into a prophet. He went into a Mount Safa. Was that Mount Safa? One of the mountains. And he called people. And when the people came, he says, if I told you there is an army waiting behind the mountain to attack you, would you believe me? Do you know what they said? We would believe you, because we have not heard a lie from you ever. We know no lies from you. You are a truthful person. Then when he said, now I am made a prophet of God, worship none but God, then they started rejecting him. So he was already testified by his community that he was a truthful, the reliable, the trustworthy individual. So if they knew him brought like this, and you're now saying, oh, he learned from him, they would have found his teacher. When the Quran says no one taught him this revelation from God, they would have said, oh, you learned from him, you learned from her, you learned from them, and they would have discredited him. Nothing they could come up with.
Okay, it doesn't, even if it was from himself or from God. Well, I would say, there's many people who claim to have revelation from God. But
so we need to now examine the Quran. Many people claim to have revelation from God, and you can examine each one. So you can give me an example and I can examine it.
There's thousands, even today there's thousands.
No, you can examine as much as you want, but look at the Quran. If you fail to match something like the Quran, if you fail to bring a contradiction within the Quran, then the claim of the Quran still stands. These are, out of many, 2 falsification tests in science when we come up with something, we can say this is how I have conducted the research. You can falsify my research by saying it's not reproducible. Quran has given us, at least in my example, I've given you 2 falsification tests. If you were to meet them, you have falsified the Quran.
I've already falsified one.
What have you falsified?
About the example of the concept of it being.
I gave you one statement from one example.
That was the only
If I give you the whole chapter and I give you the analysis, unfortunately it's not available in English because the nature of the work is in Arabic. If you were to show this, no. If you were to, look what I'm saying. If you were to take to an Arabic professor who's not a Muslim, so that will be an unbiased criticism, right? Or a critique. A critic will do the critique. Take it to a professor in Oxford or Cambridge or SOAS or Harvard, wherever you want, a non-Muslim Arabic expert, and say, this is a chapter and this is what the Quran is saying, bring something like it. Now, if they are able to, with their help or someone else, then you would say, we have met the challenge. 1400 and almost 40 years. Yeah, the challenge has been gone on. Why is it that people are unable to meet? Are you saying Muslim scholarship, they're all hypocrites because they know as an academic scholars that this can be matched, but they clinged on to the Quran saying it's from God?
Let me answer that question. So, religion is the same everywhere.
It's not.
Mosques exist, temples exist. It's the same everywhere. Essentially, you have the temples or mosques, and you have the congregation, you have the preachers. The preachers and the temples or mosques, they have funding, you know, and it's also a very good way of controlling people. So unfortunately, you have the situation where people who are not necessarily religious occupy these positions of religious authority. They control the population, they control the resources, the wealth, the food, everything. And they corrupt the population and the congregation, and they interpret the religion in their own way for political gain. So what I'm saying is, essentially, you know, the reason why, like, you know, there wouldn't be any refutation of any of this is because they had too much interest in protecting religion. Every religion has a lot of interest.
No, forget about every religion for now.
In protecting.
So in Islam,
no, because this is the point. This is my point. Every religion is interested in protecting itself from any serious criticism or scrutiny. So
I disagree. I'll tell you why I disagree.
Okay, well, let me just finish. So, for hundreds of years, Islam has existed in the Middle East, and it's, you know, in recent times it's spread more. I mean, there was the Ottoman Empire was quite big. So yeah, it's been actually it's quite a large Muslim empire. Anyway, you understand. So like, you know, the Muslim empire is quite big. So, but the thing is, the authorities within Islam, they protect the religion from serious scrutiny, and I believe that ultimately all religions are doing this. You know, all religions protect themselves from any kind of like serious scrutiny to really analyze whether it's from God.
Okay, so let's start what I disagree with firstly. I said, even in Christianity, as an example, there are scholars who don't believe Bible is infallible, and they are scholars. They will say Bible contains mistakes, human mistakes.
Yeah,
there are even.
But Orthodox.
May I finish my point?
Orthodox Christians.
May I finish?
They're not Christian.
May I finish?
Orthodox Muslims.
May I finish my point?
Okay.
The scholarly community of a religion like Christianity, they are scholars. They may have. It's okay, brother. They may have disagreements with the orthodoxy and say, I believe there are man-made influences and there are errors and mistakes in the Bible, but there are still Christians in their belief, right? So it is not impossible for a scholar within this religious community to disagree with the orthodox belief. Christianity is an example. You find many Christians who don't believe in orthodoxy in what they believe about the Bible.
but they're not considered Christians by the Orthodoxy.
They themselves consider themselves Christians. When it comes to Islam, what I'm asking you is, in fact, I mean, it's quite sad that you have labeled every single Muslim scholars for the last 1400 years to be a hypocrite, because...
Not the scholars.
Excuse me, I am interested in scholars only, that's what I said. What about the scholars? Remember what I asked you? The scholarly community, are you going to say, knowing, having mastery as much as they can of the Arabic language, knowing that it can be matched and imitated, they clinged on to this concept and belief the Quran is inimitable? That's a hypocritical, totally deceptive belief for themselves. So they're all hypocrites. They knew it can be matched, but they kept on silent and they propagated that belief. Every single scholar throughout the centuries of Islam, because we don't find this. In fact, we find scholarship of Islam is they all agree in the inimitability of the Quran. So either you say they're all hypocrites. Hang on, we're talking about the Quran. Hadiths are statements.
It's still part of Islam.
Hadiths are not words of God, verbatim. They are words of the prophets spoken by the words with another person, a companion. So the prophet may say, and the companion may use a paraphrase or a synonym to explain what the prophet said. There are hadiths which are totally verbatim, lafzi, and hadith ma'anawi, by meaning. Hadith narrated by meaning, hadith narrated by words. We're not talking about the hadith, we're talking about the verbatim, word for word God's word given to the prophet, not even his own word, even for one letter or one word. That's the Quran. So when the Quran gives us this challenge, and I gave you 2 falsification tests, instead of dealing with those falsification tests, you went into a general statement like there are other religions, they make claims, and we can...
No, the point is that the Islamic scholars wouldn't disagree with the Quran because they're Muslims. So why would they...
Hang on. So the Muslim scholars, why would they not disagree if they know that it can be imitated? If they do not disagree knowing that
they wouldn't study anything apart from the Islamic text, so why would they find anything?
Sorry, just 1 second. Are you saying throughout the Islamic centuries there weren't scholars who were masters in the Arabic language and rhetoric?
Well, it's only the Arabic language. They haven't...
No, Quran is in Arabic language.
Yeah,
so those Muslims, the Quran is in Arabic, not in Chinese or in English. The Quran, its delivery, its miracle, its challenge is on the Arabic language, not in the meaning in other different translations. I'm sure Chinese and English are beautiful in their languages. I'm not putting down any languages. I'm saying the Quran is in the Arabic language. So when we're talking about the challenge of imitation of the Quran, it needs to be in the Arabic language. So did those scholars throughout the centuries know that it can be imitated, and yet they believed in otherwise? Then they are hypocrites. So you are saying every scholar of Islam in the Islamic faith, they're all hypocrites.
Well, let me say this. If there was a scholar who found something that they felt was as good as the Quran or better, then we wouldn't know about them because they would have been killed.
Excuse me?
They would have been.
So you don't know much about Islamic history?
They said, "Oh, I found something that fulfills this challenge." They would have been killed.
Really?
Of course. The religion, you know, the
So that really shows we need to understand something. Having dissent from a belief, there are people who believe the Quran is created, and there are people who believe Quran is not created, and they existed side by side. One did not wipe the speech of God is created. If we believe God is eternal, his speech is eternal, there are a faction of people who believe God's speech is created, and there are some who believe it's not created, right? And they existed side by side. They did not totally wipe out everyone. They might try to do that, but it's impossible. You can't. So there's dissent where possible, and history tells us that these kind of dissent or disagreements exist. The Sunni and the Shia, in all the disagreements about the Quran, about the Prophet, about the Caliphate, they exist side by side. They haven't wiped one for the other. They exist. So your idea that if some